So I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure these are the portal pages, or at least the start to them, because there's a little footnote on that bottom right page, and it says, "The instructions to power this will be far too dangerous to put in one place. I may need to separate them throughout my journals to be safe." And that screams to me that this is going to be the start to the portal. But one thing I noticed is that the triangle drawn here has the point facing upwards, and I could have sworn the portal had the point facing downwards. So I wonder if that's going to be something that he's going to have to work out later, or if I'm just looking too much into this. Either way, we're going to be working on a 2-page spread here. Hate when it does that. So as far as weathering, I want to start pulling back on that because all the wear and tear is starting to show a little too much in my opinion. And I feel like we can also say that because Ford already talked to Bill, his mind is kind of starting to come at ease and he's no longer frantically documenting stuff. I really hope that is going to be the case because it feels like this is going to lean more into research opposed to all the creepy stuff that he's seeing out in the field. And I don't want the transition to be extremely harsh and very obvious, so I'm going to have it slowly transition to a lighter color scheme, while also keeping my reference in mind. Not entirely sure how I want to go about it, but I do want to start leaning away from those reds, and more into that yellow undertone. So based on my reference, there's not too much color going on here. And it doesn't seem like it's going to require any form of highlights, so we're going to go ahead and just add really flat colors here. Just enough just so that they don't blend in entirely with the page. We want them just to pop a little bit, but we don't want to stray away too far from the reference. I probably should be using a ruler, but I feel like that kind of takes away from that homemade look, so my line work is going to be slightly crooked, which in my opinion is perfectly fine. But feel free to use a straight edge if it helps you out. So my problem here is I accidentally undershot that line, and so to fix it, I'm just going to use a little bit of a tan acrylic and try my best to cover that up. And because it looks a little too obvious that I patched it up, a little bit of brown just to add some color back. From my experience, this is the best way to fix any of these mistakes. But that doesn't mean this is the only way to fix these problems. There's always going to be a multitude of solutions. So as far as line work, I'm mostly going to be using a 0.8 pen for this full drawing. I will occasionally drop down to the smaller pen sizes, but for the most part I'm going to be sticking to that 0.8. And the same thing down here, we're just going to be using a 0.8 for this one as well. And like usual, we're going to go ahead and grab our red Sharpie, and we're going to go ahead and draw in all these little squares. But I'm not going to be using that Sharpie for the bottom right symbol. I have a different plan for that one. But going back to the art pens, again, I'm going to go back to a 0.8 pen, and I'm not going to be changing line weight too much. The drawings are pretty simple on this page. And this page is going to have those little blue symbols again, but I made the mistake of using a darker blue when I should have used this lighter blue. The darker blue blends in a little too close to that black. So this is just going to be something I'm going to have to keep in mind moving forward. And because those symbols are really small, I'm going to be using a 0.1 to 0.2 pen here. If I try using anything else, I might end up losing those details. And then I have a few areas up here that I just want to use my regular pen for. But before I go ahead and start writing out the whole message, I noticed there's quite a bit of color that I didn't quite add to this page. And I'm going to want to correct this before writing out the full message. If I wait until afterwards, the text can bleed a little bit, and it gets a little bit blurry and a little bit harder to read. So unless I'm intentionally adding water after the text, I'm going to want to do this part beforehand. And so what's written here is just a couple different notes. And as I'm rereading it, I am coming to the conclusion that yes, this is the beginning research part of his portal. And then the same thing on this side is just a continuation of notes, with that bottom half reading that he needs to separate all his research. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of color to this drawing right here, just to help separate it a little bit. And I'm just going to add a few more splatters in a few areas. So this is where the tricky part's going to come in. Earlier in the journal, I was doing a technique where I was using a red pen that would bleed really easily with water. Now, although I think that has a superior look to the red Sharpie, the issue with that is it would go through multiple pages. But that was a technique that was shown earlier in the journal, and because I want there to be a consistency of techniques throughout the whole journal, this is going to be a spot that I think is going to best represent it. So no matter what I do, this is going to be shown on the next page. But to help prevent it from bleeding onto multiple pages, I have just a plain piece of paper here, folded twice. Is this going to be sufficient? I'm not entirely sure, but I really hope it will be. So with some clean water and hair dryer ready, we're going to go ahead and add a generous amount of water to that area. Now, the longer you let the water sit, the more it's going to start bleeding outwards. You don't want to wait too long, because the longer it sits there, the harder it's going to be to distinguish what's going on. So I'm going to roughly wait around 15 seconds. And I'm just going to do a few minor touch-ups as I go along. Right here, I completely lost one side of the symbol, so I'm just going to do little touch-ups with that red pen, with just a little water just to blend it in better. And you can see it did bleed onto the opposite side of the page, which is what we expected. And you can see our scrap piece of paper did save the rest of the journal. And as we unfold it, you can see it went through almost 4 layers. So we got lucky this time. But next time, I'm going to make sure to have at least 5 layers. Still a little wet, so I'm just going to hit it with the hairdryer for a few more seconds. But other than that, it's pretty much done. So I had this question earlier about the skull on my desk. So this is actually a pre-made thing that I kind of modified. Like you can see right here, the eyes have that instant coffee in there to get that really dark look. The jaw's all really crooked because I was trying to match the show. This top half is actually a candle from Michael's. And I just kind of used the hair dryer to try to mold this into a better shape, and then I kind of repainted it. And then this bottom here is from another display, and I just kind of glued these things together. And I just kind of put that instant coffee kind of everywhere in different layers to try to get different shades of brown, which is kind of gross if you think about it. And you can see certain parts are actually melting because of the hair dryer. And because where I live, I could never take this outside. Help me! Oh my God! It just melt on the spot. It has gotten pretty dirty though. And then as far as the other things on my desk, I also have this compass right here, which is now extremely dirty, but that would clean really easy. It's just watercolor or gouache, same thing. Originally, I did have another compass, but it was too small and it didn't really work out. And then I also have this little candle holder. I'm not sure if that's what they're called, but that's what I'm calling it. And so I actually found this bottom half at Goodwill, and this top half is actually from Michael's. And I melted some of this candle on purpose, but quite a bit of it is melted because I have it next to a salt lamp right now. But those are the things on my desk. Would you believe 113 was actually a nice day? It's a little quick snack, you know, before we draw. That's good. So this is not going to be the most glamorous looking page, but does have some pretty good plot story going on here. But I'll get into that a little bit later. So we're just going to go ahead and start weathering this page, but because we have that red ink right there, I'm just going to use a piece of paper, try to protect it, just in case it decides to bleed further. And slowly but surely, we are starting to lean away from those reds and more into that yellow undertone, but we're going to have to be doing this gradually, so over time, each page is going to lighten up a little bit. And because we don't really have a drawing on this page, we're going to have to make up for it with a lot of extra weathering in places. And then we're just going to add a little bit of red weathering right here. Nothing too crazy, we still want to keep it pretty subtle. And now that we have a good amount of weathering on the page, we can go ahead and start fixing that bottom left corner. We want to make sure to add the acrylic after all the gouache paint because it's easier to add on top of the gouache than for the gouache to go on top of the acrylic. And so I'm just going to be using a mixture of a light tan color and a dark brown and a little bit of a lighter brown. And I'm just going to go back and forth until I find a happy medium. You know, my gut is saying to leave it at this point, but I think I'm going to try and add a little bit more. And then I'm going to be adding a second layer just to further help hide that symbol. Yeah, I should have left it alone. One layer looked a lot better. And then for the titles, I'm going to be using a 1 pen for this. That'll give it a very similar look to the brush, but it also allows me to get a really clean, tight look to it. You know, ironically, it is July. And then using our red Sharpie, we're going to go ahead and add in all those little squares. And then once we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and grab our lighter blue pen and we're going to go ahead and color in those blue symbols. I like to do this prior to adding in the rest just because I do lose track of them. And for the symbols, I'm just going to be using a 02 pen. I don't know about you, but my hand always cramps after making those symbols. I like strain my eyes to try to see them. And now that we're done with that, we can go ahead and move on to the message of the page. And what's basically being said is in the July 18th part, Ford is realizing that he doesn't have enough knowledge to make this portal. And as you read further into it, it's talking about recruiting an old classmate, which he was lucky, and Fiddlefark wasn't as lucky, that he decided to help join in on this project. And there's one line in there that I thought was pretty funny. It reads, "I should probably shower." So I can only imagine how musky his whole lab is. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of gouache paint to some areas that I feel like are missing it. Overall, not too complicated of a page. So today we're working on the first part of My Assistant. It's gonna be one of those days, huh? Just ignore this. Now I did debate whether or not I was gonna and try that again. So I did debate whether I was gonna do the 2-page spread, but I figured that's too much work and I just want to do 1 page right now. So I'm only gonna work on the first half. And it ended up taking a little bit longer than I thought, which is okay. You know, don't feel bad. This is all self-inflicted. And you know, at times I kind of forget, why am I even doing this? Like, I know why. Like, I wanted a special edition, but that's only because I found out that my journal doesn't glow. But this seems honestly more difficult than just trying to make like 20 grand and buy one. Then again, if I could make 20 grand easily, I would have bought one. This is why I'm making it. You know what? I just remembered. That's why I'm making it. Because it's easier to make one than try to make a bunch of cash. and try to buy one. Actually, you know what I really want? Okay, so they only made 10,000 special editions. I want them to make a whole brand new one. I want 10,001. That's what I want. Out of this whole thing, that's what I'm hoping to get. Journal 10,001 so that I can throw it into a corner and never look at it again. Because if I'm being honest, half my projects just get thrown into a closet. I don't even look at them afterwards. You'd be perplexed at how many paintings I have just shoved in the closet. I develop this hyperfixation on random fandoms. And the only way to get it out of my system is I paint it. But none of them have ever taken longer than a year, at most. So I feel like I'm in a weird state of limbo right now, if that makes sense. I'm just kind of on autopilot sometimes, trying to make these pages. Making these pages almost feels like an excuse to actually watch TV, because that's what I'm doing. I have my phone just kind of propped up on the side right here with something just playing. Sometimes I'm watching debates, sometimes I'm just listening to podcasts, maybe a different anime. Because sometimes it's difficult to just watch TV. I'll feel the need to start scrolling on my phone at the same time. I have to have multiple things happening at once, which is probably not healthy, if we're being honest. My current fixation right now, you know the movie Pixar's Cars? I've been watching all sorts of videos, learning all about the lore, about how Lightning McQueen was made, all his races, an unhealthy amount of obsession right now. So if you randomly see me drop a Lightning McQueen painting, don't be surprised. I've been trying to avoid side projects. I mean, I have random things I want to work on, but if I do, then the journal will just never get done. You know? Not that the journal feels like a task, but I do want to at least keep a decent pace. Currently, I'm just trying to at least post once a week. So at least 1 to 2 pages a week. I know that's not really a good pace, but it's kind of really the best I can do right now. Motivation's been pretty low lately, but we'll see. Give it some time. Maybe it's just because it's really hot outside. It's been uncomfortably warm. I can feel it coming through the house. It was, what was it? It was 113 one day, and then it went up to 117. And I don't even know if this is true or not, but my car was saying it was 120 outside.
This is it. This is the end. I'm not going to make it.
Also, after recording that, I realized the date on my car is really off. It's saying it's 2014. I have no idea how I didn't notice that. I know the time is off by a few minutes, but the year is really far off. Oh, and going back to Cars, right? I'm not just casually watching Cars, by the way. That's my kids have been watching it, so I've been watching it multiple times in a day. I'm borderline about to memorize everyone's lines at this point. It's a good movie, though. I'll give it that. I remember when I first watched it, that movie is really good. But I've never seen Cars 2 or 3. I don't know. I've heard 2 is not that good, and I heard 3 kind of made it worse. But Cars 1, a solid movie. But the obsessive research part, that's me. No one's forced me to do that. There's a really cool channel here on YouTube that I've been watching that just kind of goes over a bunch of Cars lore. So I've just been binging this guy's channel this whole time. That, and I've been playing a lot of Death Stranding too. It's kind of like a filler game for me, because the one I really want to play is Metal Gear Delta, the remake of Metal Gear 3. That one I'm gonna obsessively play, because I obsessively played that one when I was a kid, mostly because I only had 6 games. But this time I'm actually gonna play it for real, because when I was younger I played it on super easy mode, because you get to have a tranquilizer that you can have at all times. But you get older and you're like, it's not really a challenge. So I always keep games at either normal or at least hard. I'm lying. I always put it on normal mode. I'm not going to play it on hard mode. I'm trying to enjoy the game. I'm not trying to be the best. Not the best anyways. I only got tricked into playing a game on hard mode once, and that was God of War on the PS4. Me and a few buddies were all playing the game, and I got pressured into playing it on hard mode because they saw me click normal, and they're like, no. Go back, restart it, we're doing it on hard mode. And then they didn't even watch me play. I was just playing by myself. I was just getting frustrated by myself. So don't fault me, but I like to play games on normal mode. Just realized I've been yapping this whole time. I haven't even once talked about this page. This page, I'm sorry, I don't have a script. I feel like I should have a script because I feel like everyone uses a script. I don't. I just talk. And it's just whatever's on my mind at the moment. And I'm not bragging, right? I'm not like, oh, I can do this freehand. I just don't even know where to begin to try to write a script. I feel like that's gonna take away from the way I make my videos. Because I like just having the fun of it. Doing something random, just whatever comes to my mind. That's why you'll see like random cutaways. Also, random gags that I never bring back. Like, does anyone remember Henry? The little mannequin? I forgot about that. I just saw him sitting up on my shelf right now. See, right there. Henry. Like, I have no game plan here. This is, I just am. I had someone ask me for advice and I couldn't give them anything. I was like, be yourself? But that doesn't really even sound like advice. That's, sounded like a cop-out, tell you the truth. I don't really consider myself an interesting person. I'm kind of just a regular guy, does his 9-to-5 job, sits in traffic like everyone else, and occasionally works on his Journal 3. Matter of fact, most people I know don't even know that I paint. It's not really something that comes up in conversations. It's just, you just happen to notice when you walk in my house. Can't tell me this doesn't look like an alien weapon. I mean, just look at it. It just... Yeah, right, it's a vacuum. So this is part 2 to my assistant. Yeah, you see parts of this is actually showing and other parts look like they're perfectly whited out. So I got an idea for that. So to start off the page, we're going to go ahead and try to match the weathering the best that we can. And if you remember, we're going to try to go for a more yellow type tone page here. I'm tempted to kind of leave it at 1 layer, but I do think I'm going to have to add at least maybe 2 more just to match the page. The second layer is going to focus mostly on the darker spots of the page. And I like to have some darker areas kind of bleed from one side to the other. And just a little funny side note, you can actually see I'm having a hard time getting that one little spot to darken. And ironically, at the very end, you're going to see that it isn't actually colored in. For some reason, the gouache didn't want to hold on to that little spot. Why? I'm not sure. The paper is recycled, so there might have been other stuff that mixed in with the pages. So maybe that. Is it a big deal? Not really. Of all things, it kind of adds to the page. Plus, it's such a minor thing, really. But I would be lying if I said it didn't bother me. Matter of fact, I'm looking at it right now, and it low-key kind of bothers me. Well, let's keep that between you and me, right? We're saying every page is perfect, quote-unquote perfect. In hindsight, you know, now that I'm looking at it and I'm not actually working on the page, I probably should have just put a little bit of acrylic there. I don't know why I don't think about these things in the moment. And it's not like I just worked on this in one sitting. Like, this was like maybe 3 days. So I had at least 3 days of a blunder saying, it is what it is. But it isn't. It isn't what it is. It could have been fixed. But the page is done. So the real question is, do I go back and fix it? Do I risk messing up the page? Because I've scanned it already to make the thumbnail. I'm recording right now with you. You and me here, we're recording right now. No, because I've gone down this route. I've messed up multiple sculptures and multiple paintings because I decide that I can come back and fix some things. And it never works. You can't go back and mess with something that you've already finished. I have this lizard / dolphin type sculpture that I made, and it was perfect. It was beautiful, exactly how I wanted it to look. And then I had watched the channel where they're adding shoe polish to things to kind of deepen the colors. So I tried it on a sculpture that was already done for almost a year. Looked awful, by the way. It did not work out the way I thought it would. And let me tell you, I had to repaint it and I ended up just messing it up. Now the paint's all kind of like chunky and doesn't look right anymore. And T, my wife, right, she did warn me multiple times, like, you shouldn't be doing this on a finished piece. This is not the time to be experimenting. But I have the problem of experimenting on finished pieces. Like, that's how I learned how to pour epoxy as well. Like, I put it on a finished painting. That one worked out, by the way. That didn't. It just happened to work out. But I'm not always that lucky. Right, in the midst of it, I actually found the photo that I took originally. I called it a fizzin'. It's kind of a bad photo, if I'm being honest. But the photo is from 2015-ish. Basically still had a flip phone at the time, so I didn't, but you know, I'm gonna pretend like I did. My first phone was a flip phone. Coolest thing ever. You'd be able to slam your phone on someone when you do want it to hang up. Not that I was actually mad at anyone, but you know, I could pretend. Anyways, what is a fizzin', right? I can't remember what the first half of the name was, but the back half was dolphin, right? Fizzin', dolphin. But it was basically some type of lizard mixed in with the dolphin. The concept, I don't really know. Everything I made back in the day, I was like, it's a genius move. This is my best work ever. I put all the scales one by one. And now that I'm looking at it, it's definitely not perfect, but you know, at the time, I really did believe it was perfect. When I get the chance, I'll have to take a photo of what it looks like now. It's definitely going to be harder to tell the difference because I didn't have a high quality camera back in the day, but you used to be able to see my fingerprint in every single one of the scales, and you can see all the little divots and everything really easily. But then after time, when I came back and added more paint, all those little minor details were gone. But I just couldn't bring myself to throw away the sculpture, so it just still kind of lingers around with me. Eventually, when I fix up this closet, which is where I'm working in, if you don't remember, I work inside a closet. It's a little walk-in closet. It's not big, but you know, it's enough room to work in here. Eventually, I'm going to do like a room tour. So I'll clean up this room a little bit more just because it's a little messy. And I still got to move in quite a few of the paintings from my older room into this closet because we're going to be setting something else up in that other room. And it kind of just works out to have a really enclosed area to work in because I can lock it off and then the kids can't really mess with it. So yeah, kind of works out better that way. But oh, let me tell you a quick little story about the fizzin'. So I had 3 dowels sticking into the fizzin' that would hold it up in place. And I left them unpainted, right? You could see some of the white was still dripping down it. But I had a professor which was not my professor, he happened to just work there too, who took an interest in the sculpture and wanted to have it displayed inside the school, which I agreed because, you know, that's a super cool thing, right? The school wants to display my stuff. Yeah, I'm going to do it. But he took it upon himself to paint the dowels black, which he was right. First off, it was sticking out like a sore thumb. But I was so upset that he had touched my painting. I have this weird, you know, possessiveness over my stuff where I'm like, no one else can touch it. If I have anyone else touch any of my artwork, as in like trying to put paint down themselves, I almost don't want to sign my work anymore. It doesn't feel like it belongs to me anymore. But I was pretty upset. I still remember him. So, Tom, I remember you. That's his real name, Tom. I don't know his last name, so. Plus, my school doesn't exist anymore, so yeah, there's no way to find him or any repercussions. Which is fine, you know, it's such a minor thing, right? It's whatever. No harm, no foul. It's my fault, really, for letting them take my sculpture. And back at that time, I really couldn't take any criticism at all. One of the pieces of criticism that I received, which was super valid too, by the way, which was the fizzin' didn't look like it had actual weight to it. It looked like it was floating. And what they meant by that was, since it's kind of leaning to one side, the muscles should be more tense and more bulging out, opposed to the opposite side where they should be a little bit skinnier and lankier. The guy had the right idea, but I didn't want to hear any of it. You know, when you're younger, you have a higher ego, and I couldn't accept any type of critique, which is why now I don't take anything personal. And I even take comments into consideration now. You know, we're all trying to just be a little bit better each day. Anyways, that's enough of me, right? Because I'm supposed to be focused. Hear me whistle? Somebody tooth whistling? What I was gonna say was, So back to the journal, right? For the Rubik's Cube, I was gonna add just a little bit of yellow. It's very subtle, but I was gonna add it just to have like, a smidget of color. Just the lightest amount. To the point where if you weren't told it, you wouldn't even have noticed there was even a little bit of yellow there. But those colors were starting to blend in with one another, so just a little bit of color just to keep it separated. And then just a little bit of white highlights just to help separate those little cubes. Actually, going back to how I whistled a little bit, I used to mumble really bad when I spoke. And making videos has helped me speak a little bit more clearly in life. Like, I didn't realize how bad it was. So when I originally was making the book 3 series, it's actually when I got into speaking, and I could barely understand any of the words I was saying. I would have to re-record that 3 or 4 times just to get something more audible in there. Like, you never realize how bad you speak until you actually listen to yourself speak. Because I had multiple people tell me that I mumbled in real life. Get a lot of huhs and what'd you say? So I like to think making these videos, and especially these YouTube videos right here, that I'm speaking a little bit more clearly now. I do still need to work on, that projection though still. You gotta speak from the chest still. Because although my words are a little bit more easier to listen to, I still don't really speak all that loud. Oh, and right here I thought I'd try something new. So normally I kind of just use the spy pen as is. But the problem with that is that the brush is really thick compared to, like, say this paintbrush right here where it's really thin. And the lettering is really small here. So I'm glad that, we broke open the spy pens and took out some ink, because the word Stanford is actually really small on this page. And I don't think I would have been able to get it unless we had cracked open those spy pens. I will say though, I was a little off-centered, as in the word Stanford is kind of off to the bottom right side and not quite as centered as it should be. Oh well, it adds to the realism, right? Makes it less, printed, if you will. And with that, the second cipher has been deciphered. That's a tongue twister. And so what did you win? Well, I don't have much, but I can print off a few stickers for you. And I was lucky enough to be able to put 9 images on here. Now the cuts aren't going to be entirely perfect like Redbubble does with their machine, but I think they still came out pretty good. And I even threw an exclusive one, that hand right there. Not allowed to sell that one, or at least I'm scared to sell that one, due to copyright. But I'm not selling it, I'm giving it to you. It's actually the drawing I use for all my thumbnails. If you ever find yourself interested in these stickers, I actually have these on Redbubble. The link is in the description. So we got the base logo, we got the logo with the Mabel hat, we have the zombie logo version, Faraway Birdo, Skeleton Birdo, my last paper clip, the number 4, it's kind of my thing, the hand, and the eternal coffee. Just put those off to the side for now, and I will finish packaging that later. And I don't know if you remember this clip. Okay, so we have journal 3, and we have journal 3 spare journal, and then spare journal, and then the spare journal, but I actually had a 5th one for the winner of the cipher. When you weren't looking, I actually got myself a 6th journal. And yeah, it's going to be a very similar prize to the first cipher. And I'm just going to throw in a random doodle in here, and then I'm going to send that with all the stickers. Sending the journal so the stickers actually don't bend. Why just send cardboard? Also, this pen has no ink in it. But luckily, I do have backups here. They did rebrand, so I'm just going to check to make sure that they're the exact same pen. If they're different, we'll figure it out. Take off the little protector here, which never seems to come off. And then comparing the two, they're the same pen. All right, I might have lied a little bit. I didn't actually buy the 6th journal. Wait, does he have 4 fingers or does he have 5? So back in January when my birthday was going on, because we do that once a year, my family thought it'd be really funny to get me another one of these journals. So that's where the 6th journal comes from. And I only need one more to make journal 2, so kind of just a spare journal. Wow, would you look at that? They're both right. Okay, this is not a joke. This is not a skit. I don't know where my paperclip is. Could have sworn I put it over here, but no. Where is it? Where is? Oh man, and I don't even know where I put the other ones. And it was just right here. Take a look at my hand. What to do? I have an idea. Okay, this sounds really strange, but I'm gonna use one of the forks that I use to stir epoxy. Don't judge. Watch, it's gonna work really well. And in the meantime, I will place an order. So how far are we in this journal? We are just past McGucket's intro, so we should be right here. And then I will check on the side to see if this has any blacklight on it. So just a little minor thing, it is super hot in this room, so I have the fan going, which I know ruins the audio, but it's super hot in here, man. I think it was like 115, 116. And there are just some days where the AC just can't keep up with the heat. And there's not really much we can do to stop the heat. I mean, I could plant a tree in the backyard, but that's gonna take at least like 15 years before it actually shades anything. And that's if it actually catches my house. Because can you imagine that you spend 15 years growing a tree and it's like facing the wrong direction? The shadow, I mean, like it's not on top of the house. My parents are really lucky. They have like this giant oak tree in front of their house, and it shades the majority of their home. It would shade the side that my room was in, so during summer it was always really nice. However, their side of the house was not shaded. Like it would get really warm in that room. And it doesn't help that originally it was a garage that got turned into a room, not by us, but by a different family. And ironically, right now, the way the house is set up, the majority of the heat hits me and T's room, but the kids get a shaded part of the house. Full circle right there, circle of life. Yeah, you see right there, the ink kind of bled through a little bit. I wonder if I can use my pen to hold it in place. Nope, gotta go use the good old fork, which is surprisingly effective. And to patch it up, just gonna use a little bit of I accidentally hit the frame a little bit. But just a few drops, and that's all it really needs. And then we'll just clean up the frame a little bit. See? Just like it never happened. Easy peasy fix. Actually, I don't know why I'm going to keep that in frame. Should put it over here. My hand is shaking a little bit, so I'm just going to go eat something real quick. Sometimes I tell myself I'll eat afterwards, but then my hands start shaking and I start messing up the line work, so that's what happens when you don't eat. But, I just ate a quick sandwich and a little bit of a yogurt. So it should be good to go now. A little late this week for posting. I meant to post last week, but I got caught up doing some commission work. Not by choice, mind you. I'm kind of reserved about commission works, where if I can avoid them, I will. But I knew the guy, so why not, It did get a little complicated, though. It went from we're making a very small design to borderline hyper realistic. It's not perfect. It's still kind of off. You can still tell it's a drawing, but it's getting kind of close. I'm not gonna lie, it was looking really good. Plus the guy was totally right. First design did not look good. So minus the company name, this is more or less what it looked like. Still have a few more that I got to work on for him, but the other stuff are really simple compared to this one. Possibly in the future, I might get into doing more digital artwork. I'm definitely not the best at it. It does take me a really long time. But ironically, this is actually the second commission I had to do that week. I also knew another guy who wanted a design, but he wanted a more simpler one, a more, I don't know how I would explain it. Kind of like how my logo, where they're just like kind of flat colors with like a hard shadow, more illustrated type of drawing. which is the stuff that I kind of prefer to do. I have practiced more on the realism side for digital and for traditional artwork, but I do still have quite a bit I need to learn from that. And you know, the rule of thumb is always you got to get past your first 100 bad drawings before you get one good one. So I'm probably maybe around 10 like realistic drawings in. So I got about 90 more before I actually hit like a good stride. I was thinking about doing a pickles drawing actually. I even have a whole setup here. I have like the easel set up with just a printed out image of pickles. And I'm kind of going back and forth if I should do more of a stylistic type of drawing or a realistic one. I've never tried doing that in real life, like all the fur and stuff. But I can imagine if you use like a fan brush, you could probably get really nice fur. There's just so many things I want to work on. And like, I'm really excited for like, I don't know, the future. Like, I just love to see like my future gallery. I tried putting down some guidelines and honestly, it's not working out. So I'm just gonna go for it and hope for the best. Like, can you imagine at like a 90-year-old Berto's gallery, just looking at all the things that I've made in my life? If I'm lucky, I'll be able to be like 90 years old making artwork. Probably. Might have a robot hand by then. That'd be kind of cool. I don't like change either, but we gotta do what we gotta do. They always add so much tape. And we're gonna go with you, Timmy Jr. You are gonna hold the fort down. That, so confusing. So today we are working on codes, the page codes. Look how lucky I got. This thing exploded. This is going to deal with the Caesar cipher, the @bash, and then the A1Z2. Wait, does that say Z? Let me see. A1Z26. Yeah. And so to start things out, I'm going to be mixing a little bit of acrylic, and the reason I'm going to be using acrylic is because if you add this on prior to adding any type of gouache on top, it's very difficult to remove it. So the idea here is to add an acrylic base and then try my best to try to get rid of it. That way I can get a really weathered old version of what I'm trying to get here. This symbol's a little bit difficult and a little confusing, honestly, and it took me a good while to try to figure it out. I did mess up the design a little bit, but I was able to save it. And that's about as difficult it gets on this page. Afterwards, it's just adding a bunch of gouache and weathering to try to get it to look really old. So nothing too much different other than that. I've got some pretty exciting news and some bummer news. Exciting news, so I'm coming up on that 50K mark, so finally gonna get the chance to make my journal too. Got a few ideas, hopefully I don't mess it up, but we'll see. I'm gonna start working on it this week because I have a feeling I'm gonna hit the 50K mark next week. And if I don't, then, you know, I'll just hold on to the video for a little bit longer. And the bummer news, which I don't really consider bad news, is just mildly inconvenient. We had a pretty bad storm hit our area not too long ago, a couple days ago, and knocked out my internet. So mildly inconvenient, you know, like the house has been a little bit quiet. We were lucky though that we did have like 3 DVDs laying around, and almost like a cruel prank, one of the DVDs was, and you'll never guess this, was a movie Cars. If this is your first time watching one of these videos, My kids have been obsessed with the movie Cars, and they've been watching it nonstop. And I got really interested because I only watched it once or twice growing up. So I was enjoying it, and I went deep into the lore, and I'm now gotten to the point where I've listened to Cars 5 times a day, and the humor's gone. I'm starting to hate the movie at this point. So when the internet went out, we're like, okay, well, let's pull out some of the DVDs. And behind the entertainment center, brand new, never opened, still in the wrapper, Pixar's Cars. And my kids have only recently gotten into Cars. Like, it's only been like a month or two. And neither me or T remember buying this DVD. So we would have had to have purchased this prior to the kids even being born. And I'm like, it's so weird how everything just aligns for one moment. And this one moment happens to be my kids really wanting to watch Cars. So guess what we have been watching on repeat? Still, even without the internet, we have been watching Cars. Not Cars 2, which I watched, not a big fan. Not Cars 3, which I still need to watch that one. We've been watching just the first one over and over and over. Occasionally we get to watch Bluey, which, at least it's something different. And then the other DVD we have is Lego Batman, which that's a good movie. I'd watch that one, but they don't want to watch that one. I was going to upload this video yesterday, but I was waiting for the internet guy to show up, and he didn't show up today. And they didn't work on the weekend, so I'm going to probably upload this on my hotspot because I need to clear out all the video footage so I can start working on the Journal 2 video. That's also a thing if you're new here as well. I'm recording everything on my phone, and then I'm just kind of deleting the footage. Well, not deleting, but moving it onto a hard drive and then deleting the footage off my phone because I have limited space on here. Is it a good system? Debatable. It's working, right? Kinda. By the way, it's not a joke. I'm watching Cars right now with them in the living room. Watch here, take a listen.
Just me and the old man, fellas. What can we just have today?
I didn't realize just how green I am at YouTube. Like, by some weird luck, I happened to get like a good amount of people on board with this project. And it's not necessarily like the video editing and drawing part that I'm new to. It's more of like the other side of YouTube. Like recently I just got my first sponsorship offer, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to reply. I was asked what are my rates and my budget for videos, and like just started Googling all crazy and like, how much do people charge for this and how to sound professional. And you see right here, I ended up really overworking the page, and this stuff really bled over. So luckily it was just these 2 pages. So I'll fix that later. I don't know. I ended up not taking the offer because it was like I don't want to give away too much. It was just a product that didn't make sense for this channel. It'd have been the equivalent of me drawing it in a journal and painting, and then going like, well, look at this beautiful carpet. Do you want this? It wasn't a carpet, but it was something along those lines, where it's just a really strange item to have here. It'd have been a different story if I was offered like different paints or gouache. I'm all for that. I'd love more paintbrushes and more paint, so ready to sell out for that immediately. You know how expensive art supplies are? T once threw away little bottles of green paint, and I noticed that the paints were gone. So I was like, where did you put those? And she's like, oh, I threw them away. So there I am, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, digging in the dumpster, retrieving the paint. I'm like, the wrapper's still on. I'm keeping these paints. They still have the wrapper on them, but eventually I'll use them, right? I want to have a wall just covered in different paint bottles. I want to have like the whole color spectrum from left to right, just every color imaginable in the bottle. That'll be cool. That'll also cost a lot of money. By the way, I tried sharpening the blacklight pen, the spy pen. It didn't work out. It looked exactly the same.
Holy shit!
See, you don't have to explain to me that it's a skill issue. I'm fully aware that it's a skill issue. And I'm starting to genuinely develop some real, like, rage, which is not normal for me. Like, I get annoyed and I get frustrated, but like, never to this degree. Like, this is new. This is new anger. And like, I had to leave. I had to stop playing for a little bit. I went to go draw to go relax. But I'm at this part where you have to fight these birds inside of a bird cage. And the sucky part is I know it's not a boss battle, but man, does it feel like one. And I started posting shorts on it. I don't know. Just I was like, why not? It's my page. I'll post it. But I was informed. I had someone comment. They're like, "Oh, wait until you meet such and such," which sounded like a boss battle, and they also had the name bird in it, or at least something alluding to like a bird boss battle. And I'm like, oh no, this is. But anyways, it's a good game. There's a reason everyone's talking about it, because it's really good. And at first I thought that the game was a little bit more difficult because I originally played Hollow Knight on my Switch, and on my Switch there's no delay. You know, you click jump and it's right there exactly the same time. But right now I'm playing on the PS5 on the big screen so that T can see me play as well. And there's just like the smallest delay. It's just enough to annoy you, but like once you get used to it, you're used to it. So that's what I was chalking it up to. I was like, oh, it's because it's slightly off and I need to get used to it. That's why it's so hard. And yeah, now that I've played a couple days, I'm like, I got used to the controls and everything plays really smooth now. Like I got used to that small delay, but I kept telling myself, oh, it's user error, right? It's me. I just need to get good. Until I saw a bunch of TikToks of everyone talking about the same areas that I was getting stuck at, which kind of made me feel better. Like it helped my ego. It's like, oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Because it's one thing if you lose and you respawn in like the exact same area. It's another thing when you lose and you respawn like a minute and a half away from the spot that you were at. It's probably not that long. It's probably just a couple seconds, but it feels like it's that far away. And now I'm just sprinting across the screen, coming back just to lose the exact same way, and just making like slight progress each time. It's fun. I'm gonna keep playing it. I'm about to go play it again right now in a little bit. But I saw this really funny TikTok where they're saying the tutorial for the first game, right, Hollow Knight, and you see like the little area where you can swing your sword and you can jump around. You can see how the controllers work, and then it says the tutorial for Silksong, and then it just shows the cover of Hollow Knight. They're like, that's your tutorial. And so I'm glad that I played Hollow Knight to begin with. I didn't 100% complete the game. I got a ending. I know it's not the true ending, but you know, it's a tough game. But definitely a good game. And I'm also refusing to update it because I've heard the update makes it slightly easier, but now my ego's on the line, and I'm not updating that. I'm gonna play it how it was. Also, expect me to keep talking about this. This is the newest fixation now. Oh, wait, did I win?
This is it. You're already cut.
Oh, that's pretty epic. That's really cool. So I officially made it into Act 2, which I'm trying to not look up spoilers, but I did see that there was 2 ways to enter in Act 2 into the Citadel. And I never ran into the last judge, so I think I went in through a different way. Because I went down the path called Sinner's Road, which ended up going into Biowater, I think that's what it's called, and then Into the Mist, which then hit me with that boss battle, which surprisingly wasn't that difficult, tell you the truth. Ever since I switched up my build, none of the boss battles have been too difficult anymore. Originally, I was using the Reaper's Crest because it seemed the most stable, up until I got to like the spider silk looking boss, and I really couldn't beat him. So as a joke, I told T, like, see, my problem is I'm using the Reaper's Crest, and that's an amateur move. I should be using the Wanderer's Crest. And I said that as a joke, and I got into the boss battle, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna speed blitz him real quick. And believe it or not, no, I beat him on that try. And so now, like, I was struggling with every boss. Now I'm not. Like, I'll die once just to see the pattern, and then when I come in the second time, it's super easy now compared to when I was using the Reaper's Crest. By no means am I saying I'm a pro gamer or anything, but I've gotten a good feel for the game now, and I can wander pretty well. Unless it's like a new area, then I'm kind of checking every corner and seeing what's going on. Sometimes I'll slip up and I'll get caught in a corner, but otherwise I've been having pretty decent time just kind of wandering around, looking around everywhere. Right now, I'm trying to find the double jump. No idea where that's at. I think that's somewhere in Act 1, to tell you the truth, but I really can't find it. And I'm starting to think that I have a lot less upgrades than I'm supposed to at this point. And I'm really starting to get tempted to start looking up everything, like where to find the double jump, where to find basically anything, honestly. I don't even know how to get to the last judge. I don't know if I could still do that, because it looked like a really fun boss battle, and I want to see what the big deal is about this boss battle. And you wouldn't believe how many times I walked back and forth from the entire Act 1 until I found that like secret hidden path into Sinner's Road. I'm really trying to play it organically here, and I've only gotten spoiled a little bit here and there, just on TikTok, you know, a few clips hit you. But for the most part, it's just a bunch of memes or animations. Very rarely will I see like someone actually fighting a whole battle or having a whole real cutscene play. Fingers crossed I don't run into that. You know, it's one thing I really wanted to do. Since I got back into Hollow Knight, I wanted to do the Hunter's Journal. But then when I looked it up, there's it's also like in the 200 range of like different type of creatures. So I would fall into the exact same problem I am with the GravityFalls book right now, where that's going to be an entire thing on its own. So possibly that's going to be a future project. I don't know. We'll see how long I stay on YouTube, right? I also had an idea for like a little 10-part series, but I don't think anyone's into One Piece like I am. We'll see. I'm gonna speed blitz him. I'm gonna hit him so fast he's not gonna know what happened. See, like the pogoing is it's not difficult once you switch your build. You know, I told myself I was going to work on 2 pages this week, but, you know, Wednesday came and then Thursday came and Friday, and I still hadn't worked on a page. And so Saturday, I was like, oh, well, I really got to get a page done. So I woke up a little bit early and then just worked on a page early in the morning and then finished it off later in the day. And it's not like I'm busy or anything. It's just, you know, sometimes the day gets away from me. It's probably because I keep finishing a page at least once a week is what's causing this procrastination. And I'm just going to really need to to kind of dig deep here to find a good motivation, because we got a good amount in our first year. And now we're on the second year of this project, and I feel like I'm not going as quickly as I was. So I definitely need to kick it into gear. Otherwise, this 3-year project is going to turn into 4 years, and I really don't want it to go on that long. Because I think the Ford section is going to be about another year, about a year long. And then the Dipper section should be another year on its own, maybe even half a year, just because there's going to be a lot less detail to it. So I should be able to speed past that one a lot quicker, especially since I don't have to do all the aging that I am on this first half. And then when Ford comes back, I definitely don't have to do any more aging, because all that stuff's just going to be new entries. Because that's kind of what's slowing everything down, is when I add all the aging, sometimes the hairdryer can't dry the page like enough, and I have to just naturally let it dry overnight. I am really looking forward to doing the Dipper side though, because I think Dippers wouldn't have all this type of hard shading. I think it's going to be mostly just like cross hatching and mostly just line work. And then I'm also debating whether or not to make the drawings a little bit worse. You know, because he's younger and he wouldn't have that much experience drawing and stuff. So there wouldn't be as many techniques prevalent. And you know what? It just occurred to me. Okay, so since I can't have it looking the same, and I'm just kind of saying this out loud and just to remind myself, you know, or someone's going to remind me if they see me not doing it. Right now, I'm doing a bunch of gouache with a bunch of line work. But have you seen how some people will use like a ballpoint pen and use that to do a bunch of shading? I'm thinking I'm going to do that for the Dipper section. That way the two have a very distinct look from one another. Because I can't have it looking like the same person did it. Because if I do it the exact same way I'm doing here, where I'm laying down some gouache and then some line work and then more gouache on top, it looks like the same person did it. And I'm thinking if I go the route of using a ballpoint pen to do the shading that way, I think it'll look like two different techniques entirely on it. They'll look like their own unique style. And then hopefully with that, you know, I can give the illusion of two different people writing in this journal. I think that'll be good, because when I was younger, I used to just sketch with, you know, like a blue pen. You know, that's really strange. It doesn't normally bleed like that. Because, you know, you're in class and that's kind of all you have. You don't have a bunch of supplies. You only have the one pen. So I think I can make it work out, because I doubt he would have a bunch of supplies. And see, that's much better right there. Or at least have access to a bunch of supplies, or have interest in having more things around him. He seems like more of a carry one pen type of guy. I don't know, I could be wrong on that for sure. It's been quite a while since I watched the show, so I'm not too caught up with his personality anymore. Man, now I'm excited to work on the Dipper section, and I know that I can't work on it anytime soon. But I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with the Dipper section, for sure. Hey, so this is Future Birdo. That right there, that was a mistake. Because you see, from that one little patch, I kept telling myself that I can fix it and I can color match the page. Because I want a little bit of bleed, but not too much bleed. And I ended up going back and forth with the dark acrylic, with the lighter acrylic, dark acrylic again. And this process just kind of went back and forth, and I ended up kind of making a mess, kind of overworking an area. So, kind of my bad there, for sure. It's not too bad, but, you know,
A platypus?
A platypus?
Alright, so we're going to start off with a quick sketch here, and then we can go ahead and go on to the weathering aspect. And the colors I'm going to be using is mostly a yellowish brown color here. Now, one thing I do need to keep in mind is that there are going to be a lot of stains on this page. And if you remember from previous pages, the more layers we add, the more we risk ripping the page. So I'm going to want to be really careful here when adding these heavy stains. You can see quite a bit of particles coming off the page. And to go ahead and further deepen those colors, I'm going to add one more layer. Now this one's going to be specifically for those stains. And just a few splatters, just so it doesn't look too consistent. Now for the platypus, or the platypus, I'm going to be using kind of a darkish brown for this one, but I'm going to be adding it in really small layers. That way I'll be able to get a real nice depth look to this. Now because I want the beak to stand out a little bit, or the bill, I'm going to add a little bit of a white acrylic behind it. And I'm going to really want to water this down, because I don't want it to be too prominent yet. So to do this, I have a wet brush and I'm adding a very small amount of acrylic behind it. And once I get a good amount, I'm going to come back in with more water just to get a really nice watery look to it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And as we continue this page, you are going to see me continuously add in more layers to all the stains. I'm just making micro adjustments based on the drawing itself, because I want everything to look as natural as possible. And for the bill and the tail, I'm going to be using a reddish brown for this. So I want it to be a little bit different, but not too different where it becomes notable. It's a little bit difficult, but I did add a little bit of a white acrylic inside that platypus just to really help separate that pattern. It's very subtle, but it is there. And then for the outline, I am going to be using a 08 pen and occasionally using a 03. Now for all the line work in the inside, I'm going to be using anywhere from a 01 to a 02. I want those lines to be really thin, but because they're really thin, they don't really hold much color to them. And to fix that, I'm going to be adding a small layer of gouache just over those lines. This will give me that shade of color that I'm looking for. And you can see that plaid look is looking really good here. But I am going to want to add more depth to this. So layering on some more gouache, I can go ahead and deepen those colors. And it's going to be pretty straightforward from here. We're going to be rinsing and repeating, or rinse and repeat, there we go. We're going to be doing the exact same techniques for this shirt down here, and then we're going to repeat that one more time for the egg. Because it's so close to the corner, I am going to be adding a little bit more support underneath my hand here. And so the exact same technique, we're going to use a 08 for the outline, and then don't forget that little patch right there. I kind of missed it and I had to come back in with an acrylic, and what I use there is I use a white acrylic with a brown acrylic. That, I would say, 85% of the time works out for me. Very rarely will I see it not work out, but it does happen time to time. And then for the title, I'm going to be using a 10. You know, I was worried it was going to bleed over, but I'm just going to ignore that for now. And then using my regular gel pen, I'm just going to add a few little drips here. And then followed up with the message of the page. And it's just going to be Ford talking about how strange this creature is and how it smells like maple syrup and bacon. And this page is going to have black light, so let's go ahead and turn off all the lights and turn on our special UV light. And for the UV portion, I'm going to be using a spy pen, and you can get those pretty cheap on Amazon. And the hidden message here is all about how to catch one of these things. And it just talks about how once you get it to fall into a hole, you'll throw pine needles at its face, making it sneeze and drop its coat. And then followed up with plenty of hugs and forehead kisses. You know, just a regular Tuesday. Realized my gouache container wasn't fully closed, and now all my paints are mostly dried out, but I'm not gonna buy any more paints. I'm gonna work with what I have. Plus I can always just add water. I'm not buying $50 paints again. Always paranoid that I'm working on the wrong page, because if that happens, I mean, I got a few ideas how to fix it, but I don't want to. So it's better to double check each time. I was drawing inside those books, that it actually did happen to me, but I could just rip out the page beforehand. But this journal has an exact number of pages, so I can't really be doing that here. So this is going to be the first of the Island Head Beast page. It's going to be a 2-page spread, but we're only going to be working on the first one. It's going to be a lot going on here. It looks like this page is kind of moldy, kind of got some heavy water damage, which makes sense. You know, he'd be out in island area, which is covered in water. So it would make sense that these pages get a little water damage to them. More so than the damage that would have already occurred out in the forest. So I'm going to be adding a lot of different layers here. Right here, we're going to go ahead and add a few extra layers of green to this corner. And that's just to simulate some of that moldy look to it. And I'm also going to be adding a little bit of gray around the main subject. Gotta be a little careful here. I don't want to weather the next page yet, so just a little scrap paper just to protect it. Now, as far as that gray surrounding the main subject, it kind of looks like maybe, you know how like pencil markings will kind of smudge, especially when you're drawing? It kind of looks like that, but I want to avoid using a pencil for this. In the past, whenever I made a pencil drawing, it tends to transfer over to the next page over. And I don't want that happening here. I'd hate to see the main island on both pages, if that makes any sense. I'm sure you've seen that yourself. So I'm going to see what I can do with just some gouache. Obviously, it's not going to mimic pencil markings perfect, but we can get something nice anyways. So starting with the 01 pen and kind of working my way up to a 05, I'm going to go ahead and try to mimic as much of that cross-hatching as I can. And the cross-hatching here is really messy, so we're going to try our best to mimic that. There's no real coherent pattern going on here. You can kind of see a pattern underneath, but then it kind of turns into a sporadic scribble markings everywhere. It definitely looks less planned out for sure, because you can see the drawing on top of it. That's going to be really nice and coherent, but those cross-hatching marks on the bottom almost look like when you're just trying to come up with something and you're just kind of free drawing. For this top drawing right here, I'm going to be using a 01 pen mostly, just because all the line work is going to be really thin and it's going to get really easy to lose a lot of details here. And to make sure that I keep up the pattern of adding white highlights to my trees, I'm just going to add a little bit of white inside that tree pattern. And don't forget the little yellow right there. Couldn't tell you what that is. And since it's kind of difficult to tell what's going on between the trees and the little island, I'm going to add a little bit of acrylic just to separate it. And then for the giant tooth, I'm just going to add a little bit of a tannish color. Nothing too crazy. When it dries, it's going to be extremely subtle and almost going to be non-existent once you add the cross-hatching. Then it looks like we got a little map down here in the bottom. And similar, we're going to use mostly a 01 pen for that. And then for all the thicker lines, we'll use a 08. And then the same thing here for the giant tooth. We're going to use a 08 for the outline and work our way down to a smaller number. Looks like a frowny face. Do you see that? And I'll also use that 08 for the title there. And just a few minor highlights. And then for the main title of the page, the Island Head Beast, we're going to use a 1 for that. Bled over a little bit, but no big deal. A couple of black splatters just so it looks like the ink spilled a little bit. And then we can go ahead and work on the red sections. And so for all the red sections, I've been using a red Sharpie. And as long as I'm careful and don't overdo it, it won't bleed over to the page before. And then for some reason, we got some bright yellow ink stains. Not sure what's up with that. This would imply that he's carrying more supplies with him, because we also have some brownish green color splattered around this page too. And so once we mix up our color, we're just going to go ahead and add that to a few select areas. First one's on top of this page right here. And then we have a few more by the title, Is There a Creature Beneath the Island? And so now that we're done with our main drawing, let's go ahead and work on the message of the page. And the message of the page is stating that they found a boulder that kind of looked like a tooth, even showing some evidence of nerve tissue, which led to the theory that perhaps this is an actual creature under here, because the island isn't always in the same place each day. And I'm not sure what the other side of this page is going to say for the black light, but this one says, head of the household? I don't think so. Hopefully the next page sheds some light on what this message might mean. So, crazy thing happened yesterday. I accidentally deleted all my settings on CapCut, but I was super lucky. I had saved my intro and my color correction template into the cloud, and the only thing I ended up losing was my outro, which was easily remade. And then I wonder why that light's not working. I see. So we're just going to do a quick little sketch here, and then we can go ahead and move on to the weathering aspect. And for the first layer, I'm going to be adding a yellow-brown as a base. And during the first layer, I'm going to be adding a few areas of extra weathering. This will give a really good base, and those colors can really start popping after a while. Especially that right side of the page, where it almost looks like it's partially burned. Something definitely looks like it was smudged. Am I not recording?
Alan, we are so...
As I was saying, we're gonna be using a number 8 pen for this part. So I may or may not have not recorded about I think it's about an hour and a half. That's my estimate that of how much footage wasn't recorded, which is okay, you know. I mean, it's bound to happen. I mean, statistically, I was gonna misfire at least once or twice. So this might not even be the only time I accidentally not record something. I mean, I might even lose footage too at one point or another. That's definitely a fear I always have in the back of my mind, that something's gonna get deleted and I'm gonna lose a lot of stuff. But oh well, you know, what's happened has happened. We can't go back and fix this anyways. You're just gonna have to take my word that I drew it. Definitely don't have a secret double that's drawing all this stuff for me. Anyways, gonna continue adding this yellow acrylic that was present in the first page. Still not entirely sure what this stuff is. It looks like something spilled, but nothing written on the page would imply any other elements present, if that makes sense. So what could it be? No idea, really, because you don't even see any yellow inside the drawing itself. So it does seem a little random. It looks cool, but it does seem a little random. And then continuing the pattern using a red Sharpie for all the red, with just a few little red splatters just so it looks like it's smudged a bit. And then we can go ahead and move on to the message of the page. And it's just Ford talking about how he really enjoys being at the lake. And then a secret message in the bottom, which I can only assume it's Ford talking about his childhood with Stanley. I'm gonna turn off my supporting light. I'm gonna turn off the main light, which is over here. And then we have 2 lights on the side over here. And then the black light, which hangs right here. And the secret message that reads here is, F's x-rays of the lake revealed this family of horrifying heads dwelling underneath the surface. Although their words are indecipherable, their unhappy marriage is clear in any language, with an additional message reading, more refugees from the weirdness dimension. So I guess that does add more context to the previous page. You know, the whole head of the household. Make sure this thing's actually recording. Can't let it happen twice in a row. So today we are working on Secret Tunnel and Geodites. This is going to be a 2-page spread. So mixing up a yellow-brown color, I'm going to go ahead and weather both of these pages. And these 2 pages aren't going to have too much weathering going on, so I'm going to try to keep it light. Just going to touch up those lines real quick. Sometimes I lose my guidelines. And that first layer is looking pretty good. Probably only going to leave it at the 1. This is a technique I did earlier in the journal. It was the invisible wizard. It worked out last time, but we had a much bigger image to work with. So we'll have to see what happens here. But it's pretty simple. You're just going to cut out an image, and then using some painter's tape, you're just going to go ahead and place that down. And why painter's tape? It's less likely to rip the page. Now you don't actually have to use tape, but I do just to keep it from moving around. And for this, I'm going to be using a light brown, a whitish tan, and a little bit of an orange. And so the goal here is to have as little acrylic as possible on the brush. And we're just going to want to dry brush that on. And what this is going to do is it's going to leave just like an imprint of the image. It's an easy way to get really crispy lines, especially when done correctly.
You know, I hate it. So it looks kind of bad right now. That doesn't look like a hand, so I'm just going to try to hand paint some stuff on there. Well, it does look better. Like if you compare it back and forth. Let it go. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's good enough.
And so now we're going to go ahead and add a little more depth to these areas, but they're going to be really subtle shadow changes. It's just there just so that the drawings pop a little bit more off the page. This time we actually have red and blue that's going to be smudged onto this page. The far right side looks like it has a slight blue tint to the ink. So the same way we've been smudging that red ink, I'm just going to do it there too. And using that same light brown color, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the cave drawings. And those cave drawings don't have any outlines on them, so we're going to have to be really clean with our line work here.
I didn't intend for it, but the pencil work kind of makes a slight outline on it. Very subtle.
And for this, we're just going to go ahead and start with a light gray pass and work our way to darker colors.
Mosquito bit me when I was sleeping. If you don't know, this has already been like 2 days for me. Mosquito's a coward.
And using some watered down white acrylic, I'm going to go ahead and start building a different layer for those crystals. Just going to add a slight tinge to them just so they're a little bit different than the background. Going to add a little reddish brown in here inside the mouth. And I'm going to keep building on those white layers. I want the eyes to almost look like they're glowing.
I'm just gonna focus on this side for a little bit. Move the book for my armrest.
And for the outlines here, I'm going to be using a 05. And it's very faint, but the reference does show a small outline around those eyes. And with that, I can go ahead and finish up all my highlights. As I finalize everything, I use less and less water to dilute the acrylic. The title for this one's a little strange. I almost want to say it's geometric. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but it has a lot of straight edges to it. And for this one, I'm going to be using a 08 pen. I debated using a ruler for this, but I don't think he would necessarily have a ruler with him on hand. Also, I don't own a ruler, so you think I would. And using that same 08 pen, I'm going to go ahead and do that for the Secret Tunnel title. And I'm also going to go over it a couple times just to give it some weight.
Secret Tunnel song keeps playing in my head. You see that swoosh? It's not supposed to be there, but I kind of like it. And let's see if it bled over. No, so we're good. Whenever I go over something way too many times, I always fear that it's going to bleed over into the next page. And that's not a problem if it's going forward in the book. It's only if I mess up a page backwards, which has happened on me a couple times.
And then for those trees, I'm going to be using a 1. And then using that same number 1, I'm going to go ahead and outline everything. This whole drawing is going to be mostly black, so adding the outlines now is just going to help make everything look a lot nicer and cleaner.
Not sure how I'm going to go about it, but I'm going to have to add a lot of texture so that it doesn't look like a solid color. And I'm just going to finish off a few more notable shadows before doing the main show. I hate mosquitoes.
And this is going to be the tricky part. For the most part, this is a solid black color. But if you look at the reference, it's not necessarily a solid color. It's got quite a bit of texture to it. So what's my plan here? I'm going to start by adding a solid layer of black. Afterwards, I'm going to add different layers of yellow and light browns. And for the more pronounced areas, I'm going to be using acrylic. This should give me a really nice pattern, very similar to the reference.
You know, that doesn't look too bad.
Now, the waterfall doesn't necessarily have a separate color, but I feel like adding a little bit of white will just help it stand out a little bit better. And so very similar, I'm just going to be watering down this acrylic and using less water for any highlighted areas.
I always do that. I don't know why I keep doing that.
And then here, I'm just touching up any of these little shadows. And then using some of the lighter acrylics, I'm just going to go ahead and clean up some of these lines.
Thinking number 5 would be good here.
And using a 05, I'm going to go ahead and fill in all the lines for the waterfall. And then using a dark gray, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of shadow to this waterfall.
For the squares on the right side, I'm thinking of using this blue pen right here. Because it's not a light blue, it's a really dark blue. And so, just gonna make sure the pen actually works and sometimes you just gotta scribble out some ink. But that does look good, so.
And just using a standard Bic pen, I'm gonna go ahead and add in these little squares. And continuing the pattern, we're just going to be using a red Sharpie for this.
So I was a little heavy-handed and accidentally drew a line where a circle needed to be, so just a little bit of acrylic just to fix that. It's hardly noticeable, but it's noticeable to me.
And now that I've given everything a chance to fully dry, I'm going to go ahead and add in the last little bit of highlights on this waterfall. And with that, we can go ahead and start writing in some of the text. Up here in the top right, we have cave handprints, and right underneath secret tunnel, it's going to read behind Tremblay's Falls.
See, the problem I'm running into now is that this page is going to be really heavy on text, and I don't have enough room, so I'm going to be using a 02 pen for this. It's going to make the text really small, but I'll at least get everything in there.
And the message of this page is talking about how Ford and Fiddleford went into the secret tunnels behind the waterfall, and they found themselves without any light. But luckily, McGucket was able to reignite their lantern by smacking 2 of these strange creatures with glowing eyes against each other, creating the spark that they needed.
It's gonna be an easy page. I'm gonna be so ahead of schedule because of this page. It's not really much of a drawing on this page. And I didn't realize how much of that ink bled over from the last page, so gotta deal with that. A rare time where I have both my paper clips. But for how long is it gonna be there? Who knows? Share one more of my tips. If you add white ink beforehand, the gouache cannot go over it. I mean, it can if you try hard enough, but you know, it should work, theoretically. And as you add gouache on top of it, it'll slightly dull that white so it's not so prominent. Now that I'm thinking about it, because that ink bled through, I'm pretty sure it'll bleed through the opposite direction, so I'm gonna add some paper just to protect it. And because gouache is not gonna go over the ink spots, I'm just gonna put some more acrylic on top of here. Some tan, some darker browns, and maybe this orange color. And if we add small layers of this, we can get a really nice organic look to this page. It'll probably take roughly around, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 layers. I'll mess around with it and see what happens. And for the big reveal, we can see that, yeah, it would have bled over. Look at that. See how it has the perfect outline of it? I'm glad I did that. It's been roughly around 8 days. My water's had time to dry. Did not mean for that many days to pass. And so I'm just gonna go get some more water and we should be good to go here. You know, the camera should not be shaking. Table's kind of up against us, so I'm just gonna pull the table back a little bit.
So picking up from where I was, we're going to continue adding white acrylic before dropping any real gouache colors on. And the reason we're doing this is because when we start adding different layers of gouache, we're going to dull down that white and get a really grungy look to it. Now, as we start adding major colors here, we're going to have to be really careful because some of the gouache colors do overpower the acrylic. So after I add a main layer here, I'm going to go ahead and dab away some of the excess. This will just help retain that white color. We want to dull it down, but not so much that we can't see it anymore.
I just want to check real quick to see if it bled over. It shouldn't have. Never know.
Now the black here is supposed to be more of a solid color, but I want to add a little texture to it, so I'm going to go for more of a dark gray. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of brown around the rim, just so it has more depth to it. And then continuing the pattern from the last page, it's going to have like this dark blue for that little blue squares right there. And so using the same pen, I'm just going to go ahead and draw that in. And because the text up here is a little bit thicker, I'm going to use a 08 pen for this. And for the rest of it, we're just going to use a regular pen. And for the entry of this page, McGucket and Ford find themselves staring up at the skies, talking about their dreams and what they want for themselves for the future.
I just realized that I had a blue underlay under these squares, so I think I can add it. I'm not sure if this will bleed, so I'm just gonna check real quick. I'm gonna do a little test here. Throw some blue ink and then throw some water on top. We're gonna go a little heavy-handed here just to see if it bleeds over. And we can see that it does. That's a bad page to do this on. Okay, so again, we're just gonna scribble it out real quick on a blank page this time. Throw some water, and then we can see if that bleeds over. And tell you the truth, I think we'll be okay. But I am still a paranoid person, so I'm gonna be really quick while doing this. Just gonna add a small layer of blue, and then I'm gonna hit it with the blow dryer as quickly as I can. I'm definitely not nervous doing this. Oh, thank God it didn't bleed over. And this page does have black light, but it's just a few dots, so I don't want to turn off the lights for that. I'm just going to use a little light for this and call it good, tell you the truth. See, this is going to be really difficult to mess up. But I probably will turn off the lights just for the, the glamour shot. Probably. I've also been thinking about updating my thumbnails. Not that I'm trying to avoid the journal.
Okay, so today we're going to be working on page 80 and we're going to be doing a Q&A session. Have you ever thought about redoing the first pages, the ones where the UV doesn't show up well? I don't think I will. That's not saying that I won't, but inside this series itself, I won't be doing it. And that's just because I kind of like how it shows the progression of learning. Also, because as I progress in the journal, I do kind of improve my techniques here and there. So even the pages that you're seeing right now might be outdated by the time I get to page like 150. And so I might end up getting in a loop of just redoing pages over and over. What are some recommendations for people trying to create their own journal? I mean, everyone's going to have their own ideas and techniques and tricks that they're going to want to do. But for some reason, my journal keeps flying away. So I'd make sure to put something heavy on it. Otherwise, it might float away.
Just had it here. Where did it go?
Do I have any recommendations? Well, if I could suggest this, I don't want you to treat it like there's a time limit on this project. And of course, I'm guilty of this as well. But we tend to live in a world where it's just so noisy and there's so many responsibilities left and right, and there's a new stress in every corner. But if you can, try to treat it like a form of meditation, where there's no expectations, it's just you drawing inside your journal. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a Journal 3 project. It can be anything. Did you use the deglazer on Journal 3? No, when I was working on my Journal 3, I didn't know what that was yet. That's something I learned later down, and the first time I attempted it was in Journal 1. And I only learned about it because I saw someone else replicate my project, but they made it like a bright red, which at the time I thought you couldn't change the color of the journal. This is also why I really like showing off my projects, because there's always going to be someone else that knows a different technique and is going to teach you something new. Will the coffee make a comeback? Ironically, yes. The next video, just because I've been getting a lot of questions on how I'm making my Polaroids, I was going to actually make a specific video about how I dip it and do different techniques on that. As far as my Journal 3 series, maybe. What do you plan to do after you finish Journal 3? So I have a few ideas. I've been working on them and posting them on Patreon. I was going to actually stop Journal 3 for about 2 months to work on a One Piece series. It was going to be a 1 through 10 part series. Still might, just because Journal 3 is going to take like 3 years, so might as well add in a couple mini-series. I even had partial thumbnails created. Here's part 1 and then part 10. All it was missing was just like the artwork behind it, and then, obviously I've kind of restructured my thumbnails. So I am going to be revisiting this and kind of moving things around. As far as when will I launch this project, I'm not entirely sure. I was thinking about just having them all completed, and then when they're done, the series is over, then start releasing them weekly. That way I'm not stressed out about working on Journal 3 and One Piece at the same time. If you are interested in the side projects I'm going to work on, feel free to click the link below. It's going to take you to my Patreon, and that's where I'm going to be posting all my ideas. And your support does help me move closer to doing this full time. By the way, here's a little sneak peek of what that folder looks like. You can even see at one point I was attempting to see what the full Birdo would look like. And just because it looks so strange, he now wears a sweater. Which here's also the concept and final. Are you going to make any other items from GravityFalls? Possibly. I might make a Journal 4, and someone suggested that I should make it a clean version so that it doesn't have any rust or decay on it, and then it still retains that bright neon red color. I think that'd be something cool to see. Any planned pages for Journal 4, 5, and Dipper's Pine Tree Journal? I actually have looked into making the Pine Tree Journal. The problem is I can't find a good base journal. So on the side, I'm trying to educate myself on how to properly make a book. It's not going well, I'll tell you that. What is your favorite out of the 3 journals from GravityFalls? Well, if I can go outside the canon, I saw on TikTok this really cool Journal 5. It's blue, it's got like this upside down triangle. I don't know who's the original artist who created it, but it looks like this. And then here's a screenshot of the TikTok that I saw of it. Do you plan on filling out canon pages from Journal 2? No, Journal 1, 2, and the Book of Bill are going to remain blank. Those are just going to be covers. Have you seen the Florida Sea Watch journal? I did. You were the second person to mention it, and so I went to go look for it, and I had to re-download Twitter, or X, so that I can go look at it, and it's super cool looking. I really can't tell if it's a physical item or if it's a render. But either way, it's super cool, and I'm very tempted to replicate it too. What happens if you go blind and you're still working on either Journal 3 or another project? I mean, funny enough, so I don't wear glasses, but I am getting older, and for the first time ever, I had a hard time reading something off a box. So the downhill is going. It's happening now. So how old is Pickles? I believe she's 7. Her birthday's in February, so she's gonna be 8 soon. Birdo Gaming Channel win. I have debated it multiple times. It's fun, you know, it's fun to record yourself playing video games. And plus more things happen, more spontaneous things. I just finished playing Dispatch. It was...
Keep up.
Now that you've passed the zombie page, what other pages are you excited for? Any Dipper page, I just want to start working on like that blue ink style, just to see if I can pull it off.
We have more pressing matters. It's one of my experiments, a shapeshifter, to take the form of anyone or anything it seems.
So just a little update, I have deleted my Buy Me a Coffee page, and moving forward, all the Journal 3 scans are going to be a Patreon exclusive. But all the current scans I've uploaded to YouTube are going to stay right there. See you in the next video. I've been really bummed out lately. So my favorite pizza in the entire world is Costco's combo pizza. There's not a single pizza that's ever hit that same way. And yeah, there's a lot of good pizza, but there's no combo Costco pizza. And right as COVID hit, they got rid of it. With the lame excuse, oh, too many hands touching the pizza. I don't care. Bring back my Costco pizza. I feel like Rick with the Szechuan sauce. I'm like, I need my Costco combo pizza. And they tried doing like this really cheap calzone. It was called like the combo calzone thing. And I goddamn nearly almost went up there and told them, can you just not close my calzone? You have all the ingredients back there. Just don't close it. Leave it open. And if you can, cut it into a triangle shape, preferably. I tried it. I tried eating it. I got like 3 bites in. I still finished it, right? Because food's food, right? But I was like 3 bites in, and I'm like, oh, I hate this. This is not the same. And I know there's more important things going on in the world right now, but like, I want my combo Costco pizza. That's what I'm hoping for this year. I'm hoping and I'm wishing, praying that comes back. And if they do, I'm going to buy up the entire store. I'm going to buy 32 pizzas and I'm going to eat them all by myself. I'm not going to share a single slice with anyone. You can fight me if you want, but I want that pizza. I'm going to write a letter and I need you to sign it. I'm going to be using this today.
It's sitting on my desk for an entire year.
So today we're going to be working on the second half to the hide behind pages. And so like normal, we're going to go ahead and start off with the yellowish brown hue, and we're just going to go ahead and try to color match the previous page. Now in the previous page, I only used 1.5 layers, so it's not going to take too much here to dry. Usually when I add 3 to 4 layers, it does take quite a bit of time to dry, almost having to let it sit an entire night. And because I am going to be using a calligraphy ink, I do have concerns of it bleeding through, so I'm just going to have a few pieces of paper behind this page, just in case. Because I'd rather waste a few scrap pieces of paper opposed to having to patch up multiple pages in the future. I've only used this ink one other time in this journal so far. That was back during the zombie pages. It was this page right here specifically. And if you remember, I used the technique where I overloaded the brush so that I can have a really nice bleed around the edges. I want something similar here, but I don't want it to be to that degree. So I'm going to really try my best here to keep it from spreading too much.
I've ended up using so much ink on this, but look, I'm pretty sure you can actually transfer how much ink is sitting on here. Yeah, look at it.
And so while this ink is still kind of fresh, I want to kind of add a little bit of an acrylic smudging look to it. I want it to almost look like partially wet, partially done quickly in the forest. I want to give it almost like a really rushed, finished piece. Almost like this was like the best that he could do at the time. Because if you get a chance to read the page, it talks about how Ford and Fiddleferg were kind of in the forest and they heard a bunch of weird noises and they ended up getting really spooked out and left the camp as quickly as they could. And so what I want to reflect on this page is I want certain elements to look like it was really rushed and other areas where it looks like he took his time now that he's in a safe area. because if it was me out there, I would have quickly sketched out something just so I could have a rough idea, and then later down come back and add extra footnotes. And to further continue that idea, I want the title to be sketched out a little bit roughly here. So I'm going to be using my regular pen opposed to using a brush pen here. And once I get that completed, just to help smudge the ink a little bit more, just going to add a few splatters in a couple areas. And I'm also going to go ahead and dirty up some of these letters. And then we can go ahead and grab our red Sharpie and finish off this red symbol up here on the top. And when using Sharpie, you need to be very careful, only one layer very quickly. If you find yourself doing multiple passes, the ink is almost guaranteed to bleed through the page. And for the rest of the drawing, we're going to be using anywhere from a 03 to a 08 pen. And so now we have a mixture of some messy drawings and some clean drawings here. So to further advance the idea of having a safe environment to write in, I'm going to be using a 01 pen for all the text. By using a thinner line work, I'm going to be able to get a much cleaner looking cursive writing, and hopefully give the illusion of more time being spent. For the blacklight section, I'm going to write it out really thin before adding a lot of weight to those letters. Want to make sure I'm actually having everything spread out equally. And the message on this page is, look behind you. And then we're going to be adding a bunch of footprints here.
By the way, I know what that looks like. Let me show you the reference. That is what it's supposed to look like. Also, the letter H and I are separated. It's just a perspective thing.
The hide behind. Local lumberjacks tell of a mysterious creature always just out of sight. But these photos suggest it might actually be real. After hours of searching, I've narrowed it down to this tree. Based on the lack of evidence, I have to conclude anomaly number 132, the hide behind, just a legend. What was that?
Let's go ahead and see what we're doing today. Oh, drawing some cows. And why, yes, I am still using the fork.
What? It works, right?
So today we're going to be working on cow circles. This is going to be a two-parter, but let's go ahead and work on the first page today. And so we're going to go ahead and start off with a little yellow wash here. And unlike the previous page, we are going to be adding a couple layers here. Especially behind the cows, they're going to have a really darker, rich color behind them. And other than the main subjects, there's not too much texture going on this page. So our main focus is going to be the actual cows itself. And just so that the main subject and the background don't mesh in too much, I'm going to use a little bit stronger yellow hue right here. And don't worry, I know this color looks really strong, but as it dries, it is going to significantly lighten up. And then for the bucket, add a little bit more of a reddish tone to it. That way when everything dries, it's going to be a slightly different color shift. And then as usual, we're going to be using a white acrylic for all our little highlights. And when using this technique, you do want to make sure your acrylic is watered down. You don't want it to overpower and then ruin the page. It's better to add small layers over time.
Yeah, I think it's actually going through the page, and you can kind of see it there a little bit, so I'm just going to put a little scrap piece of paper here for now. And that should be enough to protect the page.
And then using a paper clip, that'll hold everything in place. And now we can go ahead and continue. And as you can see right here, not only is this bleeding onto the previous page, it's actually bleeding onto this page. Which is to be expected because this is a calligraphy ink. It's not really meant to get wet afterwards. So to fix this, we're just going to use a couple layers of acrylic. And we don't need anything too perfect here. We just need it to be not as prominent. And now we can go ahead and move on to all the line work. For the cows in the back, I'm going to be using a 04 pen. And then as I move to the front, I'm going to go ahead and switch to a 08, which is not thick enough. So we're going to do a couple passes so that we can match our reference better. And then same for the bucket, we're also going to be using a 08 here as well. And then from there, we're going to add in the shadows. Shadows are going to be a little bit different here. Usually it's just kind of a bunch of little blobs, but if we go ahead and take a look at the reference, it looks like part of it is sketched in with some colored pencil. So using some Prismacolors, I'm just going to go ahead and lightly go over some areas where I think needs it. Now that we got that done, we can go ahead and start working on the title. Because what's written on this page, it seems like Ford is in a good state of mind, so I'm just going to be using a brush pen for this one. And then for the symbols, I'm going to be using a 08. And from there, we can go ahead and touch up any little areas before we go ahead and move on to the red. So this color is more of a reddish brown color. And this is going to be what stands out the most on this page. And so using various size brushes, I'm going to go ahead and draw in all those symbols the best I can. For the larger cow, it's very easy to see the symbols, but the ones in the back, it's kind of hard to make out what's going on. So those symbols might be a little off. Which is okay, you know, this is an interpretation. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and touch up any little areas that we might have missed. And as I remove the scrap paper, you can kind of see that it was going to bleed over. So it's a good thing that we had that there. And from there, we can go ahead and write in our message. And I'm going to be using a regular pen for this one. And the page is basically talking about how Ford and Fiddleford found themselves in a field seeing some really strange cows, with even stranger symbols on them. There's even a part where Ford tells F not to drink the milk, because it's producing a low hum. But McGuck could drink it anyways, because as stated, can't take the farm out of him. And so now that we got the main drawing done, we can go ahead and start working on the black light. And the black light's nothing too special. We got a little UFO up here in the top left, and then all we have to do is highlight all the symbols on the cows. Some pretty simple black light on this one.
For the past year, I have been working as an assistant for a visiting researcher. He has been cataloging his findings about gravity falls in a series of journals. I helped him build a machine which he believed had the potential to benefit all mankind. You don't understand.
Pretty well, actually. So that one is $10 a pen, and the cheaper one was about $1.76. For being cheap, it's really good.
So today we're going to be working on the second half of Cow Circles, which is going to be Crash Site Omega. And so this page is going to be a little bit different. So let's go ahead and place down our first layer of wash just to get a good base coat. And when we're done with that, we're going to notice this top right hand corner right here is going to be really smeared and smudged. So what happened here is if we read the first line underneath the first image, it reads, "One chewed on my book." And this is referring to the cows. So basically some spit landed on the book and the ink kind of smudged everywhere. Which is really interesting because it smudged red, which would imply that the base pen is more of a red tone. Usually pens are more of a purple tone, like they're just a really dark purple. Or at least that's just been my experience. And a funny thing too is I know a farm that's not too far from where I live. And I did find myself debating whether or not to actually go over there and have the cow lick the book. You know, for authenticity purposes, that way so it's really accurate. But the book already kind of has a funky fresh smell going on, especially with those earlier pages with all the coffee. Probably not my best decision, and I don't think having cow saliva on the book is going to help this case. I think it might develop some kind of mold, to tell you the truth.
See, that's a problem. That's bleeding over quite a bit. And I'm also going to be using the scrap paper here again, because why not?
I guess if I go to those lengths, then I'd have to go find a pig to do the snout imprint for the wattles. But I don't think I'd find a pig that size. Also, I don't think it's ethical to put ink on a pig's snout, especially if they're that small, or in general. Do they sell pig snouts? Just like by themselves? It's kind of gross. No, that'd be gross. Do they sell that? They sell pig's feet. So why wouldn't they sell the pig's snout? I gotta get off this topic. We're focusing on this page right now. So right here what I'm doing is I have the page wet and I need the ink to kind of spread and smudge everywhere. So I'm going to be adding those symbols while the page is wet, and this will cause everything to smear and smudge and move around. And hopefully this will give me a really good, crunchy looking wet spot. And also I am risking really messing up the next page. This page is going to look good, but the next page, I'm going to have to do a lot of patchwork and be really delicate on that corner. And on camera, it doesn't really show just how red this little spot is. If you get a chance to look at the scan, you can see it's a really similar color to the official journal. At least that corner is. The rest of the page is more of a tan color compared to that really light color that the official is. And for this little bottom drawing, I'm going to be using a 08 pen. And that's just so I can get really thick lines here. And then for all the crosshatch work, I believe I used a 04 pen. It tends to be my go-to for the crosshatching. Unless the drawing's really small, then I usually go to a 005 to 01, which is not preferred because this page is really thin, so it does kind of cut into the page. And then similar to the previous page, it does kind of look like there's a little bit of a colored pencil look going on here, or at least some kind of graphite. I don't know if I'm using that word right. But anyways, it's just in a few spots. And then for the official message, I'm going to be using a regular pen for this one. And there's two parts to this message. Top half is just talking about how the cow chewed on his book. And the second half is about how he returned to the Omega site. And how F was so excited that he spit out the tainted milk. And once we're done with that, we can go ahead and move on to the blacklight section. And I always give my camera a few seconds to adjust to the new color. And depending on your point of view, the hidden message can be either really sad or really kind of funny. But basically, Ford managed to put all the cows together and read the hidden message. And it turns out it was just an advertisement for a pancake/weapon house. And he found himself really depressed. And one last thing, because you know I like to update things every once in a while for no real apparent reason, I went ahead and updated this little animation. I thought it came out nice. I definitely prefer this one over the previous one. I don't know, what do you think? Oh, also, this happened last week.
Berto, I thought you only had one kid.
There's 3, actually.
So we're in an interesting spot inside the journal. Normally I can just kind of put my spare journal underneath and it kind of levels things out. But now I'm kind of a little offset here. So to remedy this, we're just going to go ahead and take a little bit out of the spare journal. Not too much, just a small little chunk. And we're just going to keep that off to the side until we need it for the opposite side. And with any luck, we should be nice and even again.
It's not perfect, but I'll take it.
So if you remember in the last page, we ended up having a lot of bleed over onto this page. If it bleeds over into one side, when it gets wet, it's going to bleed onto the opposite side. So if you run into this case, make sure you have a scrap piece of paper on the opposite side. And we're just going to use a paper clip to hold everything in place. And the weathering on this page isn't anything crazy, so we're just going to go for something a little bit more natural.
And for the symbol on the bottom right here, let's go ahead and grab one of these real quick. And to tell you the truth, let me see. I think more of a yellow would be better. Yeah, let's go with this one, because then afterwards it's going to look a little bit better. And we're just going to give this paint a little shake. And then we can go ahead and start working on the little symbol at the bottom here.
So the symbol down here is really small, so I'm going to use a really fine brush here and very shallow passes until I get the desired look that I'm going for. And then using a combination of a light tan and a dark brown, I'm going to go ahead and try to patch up all these little spots. Sometimes these pages have a hard time grabbing onto certain colors because these pages are recycled. They're not always going to be perfectly consistent with one another. And this happens to be one of those pages where I'm just going to have to add in a few extra layers to get in that color that I want. The specific color I'm talking about here is going to be that grayish green color right behind that first image. For some reason, it just doesn't want to stick to the page, which is totally fine. Art tends to be very sporadic, so whatever we get comes out. It's what we get. And because I am starting to lose all the line work, I'm going to go ahead and start adding in the lines prior to finishing the color. And for all the outlines, I'm going to be using a 0.8. I'm also going to be using that 0.8 for the outside symbols and occasionally switch over to a 0.2 pen. And when I make my way towards the cross hatching, I'm going to use anywhere from a 0.1 to a 0.4. And now that I can see all my lines clearly again, let's go ahead and finish off the color. My current issue with the drawing is that the subject and the background have a very similar gradient color going on, and I want to make sure it's very separated and distinguished from one another. So I'm just going to be pushing those browns and the whites a little bit harder onto the drawing.
So I don't have much room to work with for the text, so I'm thinking, let's just say, go with a 0.3. That should give me some really nice cursive here.
And because I didn't leave myself enough room to use a regular pen, I'm just going to go ahead and use a 0.3 for this one. And this page just talks about how excited the two are to be in the crash site. And interestingly, you hear Ford talk about his muse in this page, stating, "My muse was right. Sometimes all a genius needs is a little help from a friend."